Welcome to The World Today. I'm Waqas Majeed Khan. Today we have three important topics to discuss. The first one being India is busy fomenting unrest through terrorism using the Afghan soil, and that is a statement that has come out from the DG ISPR, Major General Asif Ghafoor. We'll talk about his statement and an interview that he gave to the Gulf News, so we'll talk about that in detail. And then we have something even more interesting coming from the Indian ex-Prime Minister, Mr. Manmohan Singh. He blames the Modi government for the deteriorating situation in Indian-held Kashmir, and he had a scathing comments to make about the way the BJP government is running the affairs in India. So we'll talk about that in detail as well. And lastly, a very encouraging statement that has come out from Ashraf Ghani, the Afghan president, saying that let us think of ending the Afghan war and not winning it, which is a wonderful approach towards the conflict in Afghanistan. So we'll talk about this aspect as well. Let's introduce our guests in the studio. Joining me for the discussion today, first of all, we have Dr. Nasarullah Mirza. He's the head of department for the Defense and Strategic Studies in the Quaid-e-Azam University. And joining him, we have Abass Hassan. He's a researcher with the Institute of Strategic Studies. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being here. Dr. Saab, I'll start with you. First of all, the DGISPR clarified to the Gulf News that a well-planned and executed military campaign to rid the country of the menace of terrorism has not come cheap. In fact, we have lost over 75,000 people and $123 billion, probably more than that, in this entire process. Unfortunately, what we've seen is that Pakistan is still being negatively portrayed in the international media, despite its sacrifices, despite all the hard work it has put in fighting terrorism for the global agenda, and still, being at the receiving end. So it's a bit unfortunate. What's your comment on that, sir?
Certainly, it is really unfortunate because realization should have come. Because whatever Pakistan has given sacrifices and provided all types of facilities to the United States of America, I think there is no precedent in the world. And as you have mentioned, 75,000, maybe more than that, 100,000.
We think our estimates are over 100,000.
Over 100,000 has been killed in that whole. And not only that, economically, really, we have suffered a lot. 130 billion is not a small amount for a third world country like us, whose economy, weaker economy. But we have really spent on that, and we are very much determined to do that. And we have controlled internally all types of whatever was the hideouts of the terrorists and all that, and eliminated most often. Maybe there's some miscreant.
Well, he goes further on to clarify that there are no organized terrorist training centers left in Pakistan at all. So sure. That's a categorical statement.
Because how many really military operations has been taken by Pakistan, and how many
intelligence-based
operations has been taken by Pakistan. There is no precedent really in any other part of the world really. And unfortunately, international media is very much biased on that, because what role we have actually played earlier to it against the Soviet, and then U-turn and with the United States of America, and we offered ourselves as a frontline state, maybe willingly, maybe not willingly.
Well, I think if you remember what happened then, it was either you're with us or against us sort of a threat.
So there was no other option really.
No choice given.
No choice at all, because that was the situation. Then we have to do whatever was asked to do. And that type of role, actually, international media and international community see it negatively, because we have not taken itself whatever we have in our national interest at that time. So we have compromised. Of course, situation was that. I have a personal experience with General Musharraf also, and he was not convinced that whatever he is doing is really right, because at that time he was thinking that it was under compulsion what Pakistan is doing. That was back in 2003.
But now this thing has changed quite a lot, sir. Do you think that now this war has to be accepted by Pakistan? That's what we've been talking about recently.
Actually, we accepted it, that it is our war now, and we really invested
and
in
we have
that,
suffered as a consequence of that, sir.
Consequences, and we have controlled that. That is the biggest achievement really, successfully. We have done that. But we cannot do the same type of exercise for Afghanistan or for America in Afghanistan or for Afghan government in Afghanistan, that is too much expectation from us.
Absolutely, sir.
So we most often have said that we are not really going to give any miscreant to use our soil against Afghanistan, and same should happen from Afghanistan too, and that is what is a requirement, because now it is done on the United States of America to really control that. How many forces they have, and they have been in the past, and the NATO forces and the Afghan army itself, how has been trained and all that, they are not able to really control their own territory.
That's right, sir. We'll come to that later on, because we're also going to talk about Ashraf Ghani's statement towards the end of our program. But before that, let's talk about the fact that what Major General Asif Ghafoor had said, there are no organized terrorist sanctuaries inside Pakistan anymore. Yes. And that is what he stressed upon. So in your opinion, having carried out all the operations against terrorist sanctuaries and hideouts, how do you find Pakistan placed now, since you've also been doing the research in the Institute of Strategic Studies? What kind of data have you been looking at?
First of all, we need to congratulate the Pakistani army and the political government for carrying out dedicated efforts to eradicate terrorism from the Pakistani soil. Second, coming to the no terrorist havens in Pakistan, you see, we have been categorically doing these operations since 2014. The West claims that we started these operations once the APS was conducted, but no, we started in 2014. After the APS, yes, the operation was multiplied to greater magnitudes, but we have been doing this since 2014, and it took almost 4 years for Pakistan to eradicate all these terrorist havens from the country. We also followed a very simple approach, that initially when we were carrying out these operations, we had to arrest the terrorists and present them in front of the courts, and that was a long procedure, and this actually allowed terrorists to strengthen their hold within the areas, because Pakistan army was not progressing at the pace that it wanted to progress, because there were legal barriers attached to it. Once the legal barriers were resolved, and Pakistan army, which initially had the will, way back even the operation started, Pakistan army mobilized all its resources, not all of its resources, because we have a hostile neighbor towards the east, India. We have to cater to that border as well. So what we did is that we divided these operations. We developed the National Action Plan. We developed that there are terrorist sanctuaries within the cities, sleeping cells. Then there are safe havens in the tribal areas. So what we started is that we started operations in the tribal areas, and at the same time we started carrying out operations based on intelligence, strong intelligence, to eradicate the sleeping cells. Yes. Right. And due to that strong intelligence network, we were also able to outset ISIS even before they started their operation. That operation is a wonderful story of how our terrorist intelligence organizations work. They decoded the whole network through one single selfie that was captured by a terrorist in Peshawar. So our intelligence, our army, our political elite, they have been on board, and they have sent a very, very strong message to the international community that you have failed to carry out the same in Afghanistan for the past 18 years, whereas within a span of 4 years, we have been able to eradicate terrorists from our side. And at the moment, the army is clearing, and its rehabilitation has started, and the IDPs have started to return back to those areas. The mine sweeping operations have been completed, and those areas are fit to live right now under the surveillance of Pakistan army. There is a regular threat of IEDs, but those IEDs manufacturers are coming from Afghanistan. So instead of securing the borders of Afghanistan and addressing the terrorist networks in Afghanistan, the international community is blaming continuously on Pakistan, whereas Pakistan has done its part on its own. And I'll also add one more thing, that now that we have cleared the terrorist safe havens in Pakistan, the leaders of those terrorist rings are now based in either Kunnad or Nangarhar in Afghanistan. So despite of all the intelligence in the world, so despite of all the forces in the world, they have been failed to locate, they have failed to locate those people, and those people who are acting against Pakistan.
And this is a constant threat that we're facing, and yes. When Asif Ghafoor was asked about being India focused, the statement that he gave was that the threat from India is perennial, and we have been facing the brunt of that threat constantly. Look at the number of ceasefire violations, which Manmohan Singh has also mentioned. So, considering the fact that India is a perpetually hostile neighbor and is unwilling to engage with any fruitful or positive discussion with Pakistan, what options do we have but to be extremely cautious of what the Indians' intentions in the region are, sir? What options do we have?
Actually, solution of all these problems are really to engage itself in a dialogue. But that is unfortunately
they are unwilling to engage, sir.
Unwilling totally.
And they're using Afghan soil for launching attacks in Pakistan. We have the example of Kulbhushan Yadav. We don't have any let up in safeguarding our borders against India. Working boundary as well as the line of control is constantly under fire from the Indians.
Actually, what role India has assumed because of its relation with United States of America as a counterweight to China, and what policy United States of America is pursuing being in Afghanistan, all that actually may be demanding from India too to involve in such type of activities, because free hand has been given to India, and the recent government openly has declared that the special role to India in Afghanistan and all that, and admonished on the other part of Pakistan and all that. That type of situation really created a two-front scenario for Pakistan. On one side, India is really fomenting it itself, trying rather
on
human
the Indian
rights
side,
are
on the
being
LOC
violated
and working
because
boundary,
they're
they're using
the
their
boundary.
soldiers, and on the other side, they're using the Afghan soil to infiltrate people into Pakistan.
Yes, and that may be their internal politics also demanding for that, because next year election are coming, and Modi government has come because of all that, whatever election demands or whatever offers or one can promises.
The Pakistan bashing is their favorite rallying point for the elections.
But on the other side, yes, that is really something very, very intriguing, which India playing a role from Afghanistan soil into Pakistan. And Kulbhushan Yadav, yes, that is a glaring example. He has accepted, he has acknowledged, he has done everything, and all extended stories he have whatever narrated on the international media and all that. But even then, international media is, of course, against giving all that the bias itself. And the bias may be because of, one can say, a larger connotation of the issue that against Pakistan, because Pakistan remain all the time at the center place on international politics, the chessboard. So we have been playing role from the 50s onward up till now.
Blessing of our geolocation.
Blessing of geopolitical location itself.
Right.
And that may be the reason, and that is the reason rather, because the access to Central Asia, the CPAC itself, China is really coming up, the SCO, what integrated policy they have to join all the regional level, and then of course, that is what China is rising and emerging, and China is taking this part to come to the warm waters and rather nearest ports and all that to the world, which is not acceptable to United States of America, because China is emerging as a challenger in the global politics to that. And India has been given a counterweight status. And that is what is going on, and we are really
Let's see how
facing
that plays
that
out
blood,
for the Americans.
and Afghan Taliban weaker people are really bearing that brunt because of the international politics.
Very unfortunate. Abass, let's also talk about the image that Pakistan has been suffering with, the image problem rather. And one of the things that the DG ISPR also mentioned was that Pakistan's desire for peace should never be mistaken as its weakness. And for a normalized Indo-Pak relationship, all issues, including the core issue of Kashmir between the two nuclear countries, need to be resolved. And not only that, but India needs to behave like a responsible country, stop the atrocities on both sides of the line of control, and also discontinue interference inside Pakistan's internal affairs through state-sponsored terrorism. Now, these are very major accusations that the DG ISPR has leveled. Of course, they are not just accusations. We have proof of all this meddling that India has been indulging in. So how can we get the international community to focus on this aspect? How can we bring them to the fact that until and unless the Kashmir issue is not resolved, peace within the region is going to be a distant dream?
Well, Kashmir to Pakistan is important on multiple levels. It has its own strategic location. That's where we get our water from. It's a heavily populated Muslim area, and it's a straight link to China. Now, what happens is that when the international community fails to recognize that India alone in the month of January carried out more than 170 violations of the line of control and the working boundary, and still they say that Pakistan is the one that is meddling with the peace in South Asia, this is hypocrisy on the international media side. What happens here is that this interview that Major General Asif Ghafoor gave is given to the Gulf News. Gulf News is the most read daily in UAE. So what we have started to do is that instead of saying all these statements within the Pakistani media, the politicians and the army have formalized a strategy that all these statements will be given exclusively to international media. One, because they have a greater reach. This allows us to sell our narrative, which is based on facts, as you stated, that we are doing these things and we are doing the right thing. We want peace in the region. It is not India, it is not Pakistan that nuclearized this region. It is India that deceived the international media, international community way back in 1970s by carrying out its own nuclear weapon explosion called the Smiling Buddha. They said that it's towards China, but it's very clear that they are trying to suppress Pakistan also with that. So it was India that nuclearized this region. It is India that entered into Kashmir. It is India that is moving into Afghanistan. It is India that has developed strong ties with Iran, and Kulbhushan Yadav, we all know, came from Iran. So it is India that is trying to explore its wings and destroying peace at the same time. We don't mind India exploring its wings, but the peace and the regional stability should not be affected. So you see, Pakistanis have always promoted peace. We have always claimed that even Chabahar is our sister port, it's a complementary port, and it's not a threat to the region. We have already categorically stated that the CPAC program is for the development of the region. It is not to have Chinese military running around Pakistan from the northern to the southern border. This is something that we have started to sell to the international community. Our efforts are speaking on our own, whereas India has a war-mongering prime minister who's going to enter into elections this year again. And this is the problem what India is doing right now. They have, they have shredded the fabric of peace. There were statements that the Pakistani Prime Minister is close to the Indian Prime Minister and there will be talks towards peace, but that has not happened because India is carrying out its own one-sided clear agenda that it wants to dominate the region regardless of what. We are not a weak state. India should know this. We are among the few countries that have completed the nuclear triad. So answering India is not a difficult thing for Pakistan, but this is not something Pakistan wants. War is the last option. Pakistan wants the negotiations to start. Pakistan wants Indians to talk on Kashmir. Pakistan wants to stabilize this region because this region has a lot of potential, and unless and until this region is stabilized, we will not be able to cash into our potential. You see, India has also hurt us on the economic front. We have grown up eating our own basmati rice, but India has patented it. As a result, we cannot export our rice to the Western markets. You see, these sort of low blows by India are hurting the region. It is hurting our efforts. And it also opens up an opportunity for Pakistan to sell the narrative to international community and expose this side of India to the international community.
Very important. And I think taking something forward from what you're saying, it has more credibility when the Indian or ex-Indian Prime Minister himself starts talking about the same things that you have mentioned. The former Indian Prime Minister Manmohan Singh on Sunday held a Mr. Narendra Modi or his government responsible for the worsening situation in India held Kashmir. Manmohan Singh himself, sir. He said militancy in held Kashmir has increased since the Indian army killed popular commander Burhan Wani in 2016. He went further and said that India must recognize the problems in Jammu and Kashmir and ensure that these problems are tackled and sorted. And the reason that he gave behind this situation, he said that the reason for the deteriorating situation day in and day out was the alliance between the BJP and the PDP, which he thinks are not on the same page when it comes to administering the Valley of Kashmir. What is your view on this, sir?
Certainly there are dissension and division among that different two parties, because one is in favor of that there should be peace, and
one is in favor of a dialogue, and the other one is just talking about oppression and killing people.
So that is internal politics and outcome of that internal politics. But Kashmir itself is indigenous movement after, not only after Wani, but after Wani it has been really.
But since 2013, so since 2003 was our ceasefire.
Yes.
So since 2003, there's and also the heavily fenced and armed border that they have in Kashmir, there can be no infiltration whatsoever.
Rather,
that's another
started in the late 90s.
Another smoke screen by India, rather.
So, what type of human rights violations are going on in Al Kashmir? It is also, there is no second example.
Well, just the other day, the United Nations military observers were fired upon by the Indian army. What else proof does the rest of the world need?
So that is the proof, but even then, of course, nothing is happening on the United Nations front. So the report has gone. Maybe it will be in a process. Later on, we may listen something that India is really going for this type of all activities. But even then, of course, because that is indigenous one, they have to do something about Kashmir. But about Kashmir, it means the Kashmiris are actually a party to the dispute, and they should be also given that representation by both the parties. So it is not the issue which is at this moment only between the two countries, because they are the people who are really suffering for that. Their voice should also be listened. And that is what actually United Nations has promised the plebiscite in Kashmir. And that was what India took Kashmir to the United Nations, and that was a result from, because the people's voice itself, our self-determination is an accepted and acknowledged norm internationally. And that is required to be really implemented in Kashmir.
Yes, so another way of the Indians trying to hoodwink Pakistan was by making it into a bilateral issue after the Simla agreement.
Simla specifically.
But then again, once it became a bilateral issue, it was never discussed. They refused to discuss Kashmir with Pakistan even after declaring it a bilateral issue. Even then, they are not engaging in any positive.
That is what actually they are saying, it's a bilateral issue.
So then how, then that...
They don't want third party to intervene into, because when third party came into, Pakistan has succeeded or gained something, and rather minimize its losses.
On justice and moral grounds, Pakistan would win.
Yes, whenever there's a bilateral, then there's prolonging all the issues and all that. There was nothing really concrete in terms of dialogue or discussions. That is their strategy, because they feel that we are the biggest country of the Asia or South Asia itself, and maybe hegemon of South Asia they want to itself, and that is what actually they are pursuing with all the states, not only with Pakistan, but especially with Pakistan.
All their neighbors are fed up with them.
Are affected.
Absolutely.
In terms of water issues, all are really affected. In terms of infiltration into the other borders, all are affected. What operations they have done with Sri Lanka, with Bangladesh, and all others, they are all affected. So similar is going on with Pakistan also, because they wanted that this is the way Pakistan will maybe economically bleed or maybe militarily bleed itself.
What's the end game here? Do they think that the Pakistanis are going to just say let us accede to India now because we feel that we just are part of you? Is that what they think that they're going to achieve? What is the end game, sir?
That may be we are locking into itself arm race also, in terms of all that their economy should go into that, and they cannot really match India, because India has a huge economy itself, and a small percentage is being spent on that, although it's not small. But comparatively, of course, one can say in terms of proportion, it may be small, but that amount comes a lot when you have a lot of national income and our GDP itself.
Okay, let me bring Abass into the conversation. Abass, one of the other things that Manmohan Singh said was our borders are not secure. Cross-border terrorism, internal insurgency are today's issues, and the Modi government is doing nothing to address them. That's what Mr. Manmohan Singh had to say. Would you agree with that perception?
I'd 100% agree to this. Why? Because if you look into the statistics, in the year 2017, India had more terrorist incidents than Pakistan. This is something that the international media is ignoring purposefully, because they see India as a big market. Second, India has more freedom insurgency movements than any country in the world right now. So you see, we are talking about a country that claims to be the South Asian hegemon but cannot set its own house in order. More incidents than Pakistan, still international community is not doing anything. More insurgency movements in Pakistan. Pakistan does not have an insurgency movement for that.
If we see the current direction of what's happening in India, what would you say about this new Hindutva thrust that the BJP government is really working towards, and spreading Hindu fascism within the country? How do you think that's going to blow back for the BJP government itself?
BJP, the current leadership, derives its power from RSS. RSS strongly believes in Hindu extremism, Hindu nationalism, Hindu fascism, and this is indoctrined in their minds. This is their ideology, and they'd like to keep on chasing this dream of a grand Hindu nation in South Asia.
There's no such thing.
But there is no such thing, and it's not going to happen, because even the Indians inside India don't believe into this. They don't buy into this philosophy of a Hindutva, because India traditionally has been a region of peace, and it has blended multiple religions into one. There have been Muslim rulers here, there have been Hindu rulers here, the Sikhs have governed this area.
Not to mention the Christians.
The Christians and the British, they all have governed this area, and they have lived peacefully, and all of a sudden we have this ideology which has been there but it was dormant, but now a bunch of people with this idea have come into power, and they believe that they can launch a Hindutva ideology and sell it to the whole country. It's not going to happen. Why? Because it preaches violence. It says that killing Muslims is a good thing. It also says that there can be only one religion in India, that is Hinduism. That's not going to happen.
Well, Hinduism itself is no religion, really.
Yes,
Hinduism was a term that was coined by the British because
thought.
they couldn't make sense of what was going on.
It's just mystics and norms and bunch of ideas stitched together, and the religion was formed. And as you stated, it was never a religion. It was the term coined by British.
Right. So let's also talk about the particular statement that Manmohan Singh said about the ceasefire violations across the line of control and the working boundary. He said that they've increased manyfold under the Modi administration, and our own foreign minister also said that 170 times the violations took place in January, just January of 2018. So you can imagine what's happening over there.
Of course it's going to increase. You see, he is referring to the violations carried out by Pakistan, because Pakistan is not going to keep on taking all the fire from the Indian side. It has to respond. It's a natural right. It's a right to respond to. Pakistan has never on its own carried out these violations.
Pakistan has never been the aggressor.
Pakistan
has never been the one that fired the first bullet. It is always the Indians who provoke Pakistan, and then Pakistan has no choice but to answer back in their own
and
coin.
When we answer them back, and we answer them back strongly, their guns fall silent, and then they run off to the international media that, look, this is what Pakistan is doing. So this dubious approach of carrying out its own agenda is not working. Slowly and steadily they are being exposed. They are firing on the UN contingent is probably one of their biggest mistakes.
But this is not the first time.
Yes.
This has happened earlier as well.
It has, but now the media is not the same media it used to be back then. Now the international community is, thanks to the internet revolution, the runtime data, everyone is knowing what is happening in certain part of the world. And now when the report goes back to the UN, Pakistan has probably one of the finest opportunities to sell its narrative that, look, this is India, why are you keep on blaming us? Just for once look into the numbers, the right numbers for that.
Absolutely. Let's move on to our next topic, and that's more important for Pakistanis because it concerns Afghanistan. A very productive meeting that General Nasir Khan Janjua had in Kabul on Saturday. The Afghan president, Ashraf Ghani, has called from a clean break from the past, which is a very fresh approach towards the situation in Afghanistan. He said that all the parties involved should think about ending the war in Afghanistan, not winning it. And I think that's a wonderful sentiment and a wonderful idea that Ashraf Ghani has presented for all sides to, think about seriously and move forward on. What's your opinion, sir, about this particular approach?
This is a really wonderful approach. We appreciate all that. But facts are, of course, very much disturbing itself. So they have not really able to control Afghanistan. The Afghan government, even all the forces,
NATO
which
forces.
are NATO forces and everything, for the last 16 years, whatever is happening there. Because the opposition itself from Taliban, Afghan Taliban, they have been not giving any type of political dispensation up till now. And the second thing, they are against the foreign occupation of Afghanistan. And that is what actually the borderline for them, because they are very much working and active and all that. And they are, on the other side, they are not successful. The NATO forces are, even US forces, even India itself, whatever role they are playing. So the unsuccess of all that actually is the reaction of it, whatever have been happening earlier to it. But of course, the government itself, the Ashraf Ghani government, even that is not strong enough in the way that they can control in Afghanistan. More than 60% Afghan territory and all that is not really under their control. That's not, they have no control beyond Kabul, rather, one can say that. On the one side, but of course, they are the political force itself, and the political force is going up again for the next elections also. So indigenous movement is also, and there is no other thing than the peace in Afghanistan which will really give any type of dividend to all the factions in Afghanistan.
And more importantly for Pakistan, sir.
Of course. So that is what, because Pakistan need more peace
Pakistan
than
would be the
Afghanistan,
biggest
stability,
beneficiary of peace in
because
Afghanistan.
that is the only interest of Pakistan. And why that is not being given? Because of whatever international politics is there, because that is being denied to Pakistan. And that is what United States of America is sitting there. But of course, if United States of America leave itself at once itself, that will also create a problem, similar problem as Soviet Russia left in 85 and 88 and all that, rather 90s and early 90s. So that situation will be within the warlord again. There should be a political dispensation for the Pashtun faction unless that is being done, and that will be only when we have this approach which Ashraf Ghani has said no, that is not a winning a war itself. What United States of America wanted actually all has been achieved. Where is Osama bin Laden? Where is Al-Qaeda? All has been eliminated. So itself, no, it's the indigenous people
now we've
who
got
were
ISIS
not
to
involved,
replace them.
who were not involved anyway in any type of terrorism earlier.
Absolutely, but you asked the question about where Al-Qaeda and Osama bin Laden are now history, but we have ISIS to replace those unfortunate
And we have
terrorists.
Who is actually bringing in ISIS?
That is the million-dollar question. So
Who
let's
has created
move on. Abass, the Afghan president, also said that he had pinned great hopes on Pakistan. He said, let us not remain prisoners of the past, and let us secure our future with the aim not to win the war, but to end it, for which Pakistan should help Afghanistan. Now that's also a very positive sentiment that the Afghan president is elucidating. So in your opinion, how can we help Afghanistan? What help does Afghanistan seek from Pakistan when it comes to ending the war, not winning it? That's the most important thing.
Pakistan has always stood up for Afghanistan, whether it's in the international community or whether it's the regional politics. This offer by the Afghan president is a wonderful proposition. In fact, it's an excellent proposition, but it's a year too late. You see, 1 year ago, there was a man who was rational enough sitting in Washington, Obama, the president of USA. But now we have a man who has clearly stated again recently, a few months ago, that he will not talk to the Taliban. Taliban have categorically stated that they are willing to talk, but they would like USA also to be a party of these talks. Now, because the Taliban realized that the real power is coming from the US. The Afghan government is just a puppet government. So Taliban would like them to be involved into this. Pakistan can persuade US to come and join into these talks. Probably this is what the Afghan president is trying to say, that see, you have better connections, you're good at diplomacy, you have got rid of terrorists at your own side, but now you can help us do the same in your own side. Talibans are not good diplomats, we need to know that. Talibans were given an option to negotiate way back in 2001, but they failed to negotiate, they failed to hand over Osama bin Laden, and the end result is right in front of us. They are fighters, they are not diplomats. Second, they at this moment, if they enter into talks with the Afghan government without US being on board, they would know that the Afghan government is not in a position to negotiate, because most of the Afghanistan is being controlled by Taliban.
But
and
that's like moving one step forward and two steps back, Abass, because we've also heard statements coming from the United States, coming from Washington. Alice Wells and others have also stated that the situation between Afghanistan and the US and Afghanistan and North Korea and the US is not the same. The North Koreans are engaged in a conversation with the South Koreans, and secondly, the Americans have joined in. And that is the kind of approach they're hoping for in Afghanistan. They want the Afghan government and the Taliban to start talking, and then the Americans can join that. I don't see the problem with that sort of an approach. If both parties, whether being the Taliban and the Afghan government, are serious about ending the war, then why not follow this procedure? It's a procedural issue.
It's a procedural issue. What I analyze from this is that Pakistan will have to play an important role in these talks. Pakistan will be the one that can actually bring US into the conversation. If we can guarantee this to the Afghanis and the Taliban, that you start talking, whether it's at a neutral venue or if you want to conduct the talks at your Doha office, that's not the point. You start talking, and it's our guarantee that we will bring US into the conversation. Once the US enters into the conversation, then only this conflict will be resolved peacefully, and the Afghan conflict can only be resolved through talks. They have been fighting for 17 years.
They've been fighting for over 40
years.
Half a century.
Our general actually sympathized with the Taliban, saying that I feel sorry for Afghanistan that you have been in a state of war for 40 years. And during those 40 years, there have been peace talks that started but failed because the real power players were not part of the negotiation. Unless and until we do that, we will not be able to achieve peace in Afghanistan. And achieving peace in Afghanistan is extremely important for Pakistan also. Why? Because one CPEC, two, the route to Central Asia, the TAPI gas line pipeline project. Peace in Kabul means that Pakistan will have its options to grow.
Right.
You see, when we are engaged on that side of the border, we are limiting our options to grow. We are spending our exchequer there.
Well, let's go further and let's talk about what Mr. Ghani himself had to say about this. He said that he expressed rather strong support for the connectivity with the Central Asian republics for Pakistan, and also spoke about the relationship between Afghanistan and Pakistan, saying that without each other, we are incomplete. Again, a very positive, noble sentiment being voiced by the Afghan president. How can we capitalize on this goodwill that the Afghan president is voicing at the moment? And I think that is an opportunity for Pakistan which must not be wasted. How can we gain the maximum leverage from this, sir?
Actually, that our diplomacy with Afghanistan specifically, that is, I think, is very much open and all that. But reason, again, the same, because the government itself in Afghanistan, we consider it, of course, that's the government and acknowledge all that, but it's not representative government. And that is the problem, unless the other faction has been given any type of political dispensation, even in the talks.
Yeah, but Pakistan has to engage with the government that is in Kabul. So whether it is legitimate or whether it's incomplete, that's not the point. The point is that we have to engage with them.
We have to engage with them, and we have offered them itself that why not we should fence the border. We should go for this type of all border management issues so that the infiltration on both sides should be stopped. And this type of, and then of course, if they are demanding on the behest of India that India should be given a transit route through Pakistan to Afghanistan and to Central Asian republics, and that is a precondition for that. That should not be, because the situation between the relation between ties between India and Pakistan is not that much that this type of dividend should be given. But that can be given if there is a change in the approach. And the approach is, of course, United States of America is the key for that. If they announce a time frame for their withdrawal, a minimum, of course, they have to keep there, because they are not going to withdraw totally.
They've done the opposite of
But
that. So they've said that we are not leaving here indefinitely. So there has to be some other way.
They're not going to leave it, but they have to play a role there.
Right.
But that role record positive. Are they really wanted peace in Afghanistan? Are they really for peace in Afghanistan? They are not. They came here for not peace. What they have done to the whole Middle East and all that region itself, that speaks itself. So nothing saying about that, because that is the United States of America policy itself to really control all this region, and that is why they are there, and they are not going to leave it. But of course, if they are in the interest of peace, then of course they have to say something, that they have to limit their presence there in terms of military. But of course, whatever political or other interests they have to pursue.
Right.
And that is what is really maybe acceptable to international community also, but may not be acceptable in the form that, and if there are boots on ground in military term, because it is not acceptable to China, it's not acceptable to Russia, it's not acceptable to the region, it's not acceptable to Pakistan also. And that is the reason actually which really hinting us, and there be no, until unless there is a change in the approach. What Ashraf Ghani is saying, that we should go for, that we are not to kill here but to peace.
Right.
If we are for peace, then of course the approach is required to be changed. That approach may be the realization has come in Afghanistan, the Afghan government itself. But of course, until unless the United States of America supports that initiative, nothing will be come out.
All right, Abass, let's also talk about General Janjua's statements as he had met the Afghan president. He described this, this offer by the Afghan president as a light at the end of the long, dark tunnel of war. And he said that seeking to end the conflict and not necessarily of a victory was the right approach. And we all applaud and say that it's a wonderful approach by the Afghan president. So, in your opinion, what do you think Pakistan needs to do? How can we extend our support to the Afghans so that they're convinced that we are on their side?
Well, what we can do right now is that increase border surveillance on our side.
We've already spoken about that. How about
I'm
economic
I'm coming to
and
that.
Political?
Because on
fields.
that border, there's a lot of smuggling going on. When there's a lot of smuggling going on, it hurts the economy of the country. We need to stop that first. Second is that we need to keep on giving political support to the Ashraf Ghani government, because they need our support to convince the international community to actually start a strong, peaceful negotiations with the Taliban. So once they have the Pakistani support at their back. You see, Pakistan is the immediate neighbor. We have taken the most toll, the debt toll and the economic burden from Pakistan. Pakistan provides the safest land route access to Afghanistan. So when we are supporting the Afghan government in Kabul, we will make sure that the government stays strong, it capitalizes its legitimacy, it increases its hold on the country. This can only be done through talks, and talks will lead to peace, and peace is what Pakistan has been continuously saying. We started this program by saying Pakistan wants peace in the region, be it with India, be it with Afghanistan, be it with
all
Iran,
our neighbors.
or all our neighbors.
Absolutely.
You see, Pakistan is the centerpiece to peace in South Asia.
Very well said, and we'll leave it at that. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for taking out the time and sharing your views with PTV World. One last thing I'd like to say, which is something that Mr. Hanif Atmar, the counterpart to General Janjua in Afghanistan, had to say, and he said that we have a shared history and a shared future. That is what our ancestors left for us, and we have to leave that for our children. And on that sentiment, I would say that we hope that Pakistan and Afghanistan can move forward in ending this conflict. With that hope and on that note, it's goodbye.